Sacrifice. What does sacrifice mean? When thinking about a Christian's life of sacrifice, it sometimes helps to look up the word in a couple of dictionaries. Carter defines sacrifice as giving up something valuable or important for somebody or something else considered to be of more value or importance. That is an interesting way to view the word sacrifice. By this definition, although you've given something up, you've also received something of greater value in return, which means that really there has been an exchange, a trade-off. No true loss was experienced. It would be a bit like buying a car. It costs you, but having that car was important to you, so you somehow managed to come up with the money for it. Whether you work longer hours or tighten your budget for a while, that vehicle is a thing of value and importance to you, so you're willing to pay the price being asked. You sacrificed for it, but you received something you considered of equal or greater value in return. There are many other examples where the cost/gain transaction happens in everyday life. Athletes sacrifice in order to train hard and win in their sport. Students sacrifice in order to make good grades and graduate. People in the workplace make sacrifices in order to advance in their careers. Everyone has to give something to get something, and the greater the value of what we're trying to gain, the more it's going to cost us. Putting this into terms that relate to our lives as Christians in the Lord's service, this means that, like the athlete, the student, or career-focused individual, we also have to sacrifice in order to reach our goals. Sacrifice is not unique to Christians. The average person who's trying to get ahead in life experiences many of the same hardships. Life is difficult. Granted, we may face different types of challenges unique to the Christian faith, but we've also been blessed with the spiritual gifts and understanding needed to meet those challenges. The point is, it's not a question of whether we have to make sacrifices in life, but rather what we choose to sacrifice for. Anyone who strives to achieve anything in this life will have to make sacrifices to achieve their goal, dream, or career. As Christians, we've adopted the Lord's goals for our lives and have made them our own. We're willing to make an exchange, giving our life, which in day-to-day terms translates into giving of our time, resources, and finances, giving up possessions and places that are dear to us, if that's what the Lord asks, giving of ourselves, our prayers, kindness, empathy, and love, for the sake of being what the Lord wants us to be, where He wants us to be, in order to do His will and reach humankind with His love. It's a price we're willing to pay, because we place a greater value and importance on doing God's will for our lives and fulfilling the Great Commission than we do on our own lives and what it's costing us. Now, another definition Carter and Webster's give for the word sacrifice is actual loss. Webster defines it as something given up or lost, loss. And Carter says, giving up something valued, a loss incurred by giving something away. This kind of sacrifice, the kind where you're giving something away with no visible means of return, is often the kind of sacrifice we experience during the earth life in our service for the Lord. It's not that there aren't returns, but they're not usually immediate, and for the most part, we go through life without obvious payback for much of our giving. Of course, we experience joy, peace, and blessings, but we won't experience our full reward till we get to heaven. Living for the now, seeing immediate results, receiving recognition of our efforts, and reaping the fruit of our endeavors can seem more appealing than living for the eternal. But Jesus has taught us to look beyond our everyday lives, to live and work and invest in the eternal life to come, through seeking first His kingdom and righteousness. That may not reap immediate or noticeable results, but we know that according to God's promises, what we invest in His eternal kingdom will last forever. In the meantime, however, there's no shortage of sacrifices to be made in the here and now, and this is what we're addressing today: the cost, the price of living for Jesus. As Christians, we're very familiar with the concept of sacrifice, but in day-to-day terms, what does it really mean? Here's a simple story that illustrates the principle of everyday sacrifice. I took Helen, 8 years old, and Brandon, 5 years old, to the mall to do a little shopping. As we drove up, we spotted a Peterbilt 18-wheeler parked with a big sign on it that said, "Petting Zoo." The kids jumped up in a rush and asked, "Daddy, can we go? Please, can we go?" "Sure," I said, flipping them both a quarter before walking into the hardware store. They bolted away, and I felt free to take my time looking for a scroll saw. A petting zoo consists of a portable fence erected in the mall with about 6 inches of sawdust and 100 furry little baby animals of all kinds. Kids pay their money and stay in the enclosure, enraptured with the squirmy little critters, while their mums and dads shop. A few minutes later, I turned around and saw Helen walking along behind me. I was shocked to see she preferred the hardware department to the petting zoo. Recognizing my error, I bent down and asked her what was wrong. She looked up at me with those giant, beautiful brown eyes and said sadly, "Well, Daddy, it cost 50 cents, so I gave Brandon my quarter." And then she said the most beautiful thing I have ever heard. She repeated the family motto: "Love is action." She had given Brandon her quarter, and no one loved cuddly, furry creatures more than Helen. She had watched both of us do and say "love is action" for years around the house. She had heard and seen "love is action," and now she had incorporated it into her lifestyle. It had become part of her. What do you think I did? Well, not what you might think. As soon as I finished my errands, I took Helen to the petting zoo. We stood by the fence and watched Brandon go crazy, petting and feeding the animals. Helen stood with her hands and chin resting on the fence and just watched Brandon. I had 50 cents burning a hole in my pocket. I never offered it to Helen, and she never asked for it, because she knew the whole family motto. It's not "love is action," it's "love is sacrificial action." Love always pays a price. Love always costs something. Love is expensive. Love gives, it doesn't grab. Love is for the other person. Helen gave her quarter to Brandon and wanted to follow through with her lesson. She knew she had to taste the sacrifice. She wanted to experience that total family motto: love is sacrificial action. Dave Simmons.